Who gave you the easiest time? Who gave you the hardest time in terms of people you had to deal with?
The hardest would have been Michael Schumacher. I mean, I cannot tell you how scared I was of interviewing him. I mean, it was a joke. It was like, that was my very, very, very first interview ever in Formula One was with Michael Schumacher.
What's up, Venkers? Hello, Venkers.
How is everybody doing?
How are you doing? Are you doing good? You better be, baby, because we got a big one today, too.
Oh, yes, we are keeping you fed in this off-season. We're keeping
That's
you
right. That's right. You might be hungry, but today you will be fed, you Venkas, because today on the podcast we have a producer, TV host, and presenter who's covered tennis, soccer, and football, American and football, British, motorsport, and really where it seems like her real passion lies, even more than motorsport, poker, which we'll get into. We have journalist, podcaster, philanthropist, and Dancing on Ice star Natalie Pinkham on the podcast.
I can't. Listen, I need to lie down after that intro.
Okay, here's, as I've done research on you, I've looked into you. Seems like a big part of your life, and then you've turned it into your job and your work is to just like try shit and have fun.
But that's life. That's life, isn't it? Isn't that
Well,
what
it's
we're
not
all
life for
doing?
everybody. It's not life
Not
for
life
everybody.
for everybody.
It's.
I try not to leave my apartment. It's against my will that I do anything outside.
You've turned like having fun into a career and like an empire.
Oh, wow, an empire. Listen, do you know I was actually in New York when I got offered the Dancing on Ice gig? And it was quite funny because I was working over there on David Beckham's Soccer USA. So this is 2008. This is when he signed for the MLS.
Oh, yeah.
The money was terrible. I didn't care. I lived in a mate's room, spare room in Tribeca. I did like 1 day's filming a week, and the rest of the time I just partied in New York. It was
That
epic.
sounds like the greatest job ever.
It was it was hard to follow that as a job. And then I got offered Dancing on Ice. So I came back to do Dancing on Ice.
I see.
You live like the reverse Emily in Paris, but in New York, like Natalie in New York. That's actually good. That's actually hey. Are we just coming up with you have this job you do once a week. You're like slumming it in Tribeca, like you're making no money but living in Tribeca. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All I had to do was put beers in the guy's fridge. The mate that I was living with, and I was like, done. I didn't pay him rent. I mean, it was the dream. This is obviously before marriage and children and responsibility. Right. And it was glorious. I have such great memories of New York.
So what was this always like? Was this the plan? Like when you were growing up, I mean, I've heard you talk a little bit about, sport, you were TV was always like, you were always like transfixed with the TV. Sport was a big part of your life, but like, in terms of career, were you like looking around? You're like, doesn't seem like anyone's has fun with their job. What can I do that seems like fun? Were you always chasing fun? Was that always the deal, or what was the initial spark?
So I did bounce around a lot freelancing before I got like a proper job. But yeah, like sports always been my passion. Zola Bud and Gianfranco Zola were my two heroes growing up, hence the cat that is meowing outside being called Zola. And I tried to call my daughter Zola, but my husband wasn't up for it. But anyway, this was always the plan, was that I was just transfixed by that box in the corner of the room. Because when I was 5 or 6, it was a box. It wasn't a flat screen. And I remember watching the 84 Olympics in LA. You remember? You're too young. Do you remember the 84 Olympics in LA was when Decca Slaney clashed with Zola Bud, and they both fell out of the race. And I remember saying to my dad, what the hell just happened? Well, I didn't say hell because I was a kid, but I said, what just happened? And he said, look, life's not always fair, but, tell that story. Tell that story. And I've been obsessed with Zola Budd ever since, and obsessed with like sports documentaries, working in live sport, anything, because it just captivated me.
So the fact that they didn't tell that story effectively, they left you like being like, what the hell happened? Like you felt like you were not satisfied with the way that was covered, essentially?
Well, do you know what? It was more the fact that she was hot favourite for gold. Then she clashed with your sweetheart, Mary Decker-Slaney, and they both tumbled out of the race. And it was just this unbelievably shocking moment that the two favourites were, I think Zola came in, I know she came in 7th. And it was like, this was what drew me into storytelling with sport, and sport being this incredible, vehicle for social change. It has for me, it has so much power, sport, but also just this ability to go into people's homes and bring people together, spark debate, rivalry, passion, excitement, togetherness, everything. For me, it was just always sport.
So that's your first story that captivated your imagination. What do you think is like the most enduring story for you that has kept you thinking about it for the longest time?
You guys were telling me before we started the pod about coming into F1 in 2021. For me, that was the most intense and compelling Formula One season ever. And obviously I've worked in this is my 15th season in F1, but I can't think of a more gripping narrative than what we saw in 2021, particularly obviously with the culmination, the ending.
Well, I was going to say, your dad saying sometimes life's not fair. Covering Formula One, it's like something that we gravitated towards, and it was like, it's so deeply unfair. At least in other sport, there's like a leveling of the playing field. It's like in Formula One, it actually mirrors life in a way. There's actually something that's both more depressing about it, but also like just more honest about it, because in life we don't get, and then the person who's not doing well gets the first pick in the draft, and then they get the best player ever, and then all of a sudden, this team, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now very good, and the Oklahoma City Thunder are very good in the NBA. It's like, no, the Yankees win forever, and that's what it is. I guess, I don't know. How has that been? You've been covering Formula One for so many years. Like, where do you reckon with that aspect of F1, with the disparity of money, with teams at the bottom feeling like they just stay at the bottom, or are we just kind of like new fans that feel like that's just will always be the case?
No, you make a really valid point, and I think one of the problems that I had with 2021 personally was I couldn't explain it to my kids. And if I can't explain it to my kids, how can we as broadcasters explain it to the viewers, the public at large? How can anyone really understand it? Not least of all the protagonist, not least of all Lewis, So I tell you what, for me, the most enduring memory of that day was seeing Anthony Hamilton go up and whisper in his son's ear. And to this day, I've never asked him what he said to his son. I don't want to know, because it was such a private moment on a very public stage. But whatever it was enough for Lewis to walk up to Max and shake him by the hand, look him in the eye. And I thought, my God, if anything we can take out of this is this incredible moment for children everywhere to see how to deal with adversity and defeat graciously, magnanimously. And I still contend to this day that Lewis walked away from that moment with more fans globally than if he'd won an 8th world title, because of the way he handled it. It was just incredible.
With class.
Yeah. No. And by the way, I didn't want or expect to get drawn into the 2021 thing or take us into it. But I always say as well, this wasn't Max's fault. Like, Max was a deserved winner as well. Like, you saw some of the performances he put in that season. if you could have split the title in two, both of them were just incredible champions that year. And it was a shame that it ended the way it did, because actually that overshadowed what was an epic year of racing.
And when you're negotiating, like, okay, so obviously Sky is a British broadcaster, and you're broadcasting to majority an English-speaking and British audience. I guess, what is the approach to a situation like that where a British driver is heavily involved in a controversial subject, incident, and knowing who your audience, you got to know your audience, right? But you also have to maintain a sort of journalistic sort of objectivity, but it's entertainment, but you don't want to be too British, because then you're going to get hit by the British bias. How are you navigating all these things these days?
I don't think anyone was thinking about navigating it in that moment. We were genuinely in shock. Not as much shock as Nicholas Latifi, who walked across the pen towards me and his eyes out on sticks. And I just said, "What just happened?" And he said, "I don't know. I mean, we were literally lost for words." And look, you talk about the Britishness of Sky. We go out to 60 different countries. We're actually acutely aware. I mean, I know much has been said about whether there is a bias. Will we lean into the British stories? Well, yes, we will, because we know that that's what a lot of our viewers want to see and hear. But I really think, I mean, no one cares about my opinion anyway. I'm a presenter, not a pundit. But I really think our punditry team are very, very fair. They're very, very balanced. And I always feel quite, that I want to step up and defend them in that, because I'm there for every minute of our coverage. And I just think they do a great job we might show more content and lean more towards British drivers in terms of what we show. But in terms of the opinions of them, I think actually it's very balanced. But I'm bound to say that, aren't I?
I'm curious what your, because we went to Silverstone this year, speaking of the Britishness. And
how was it? Did you enjoy? How good was that?
Yeah. No. Okay.
Did you love it?
Yeah. I Brian. Yes.
What?
Please. Like, before you get into that, all we're hearing about is how great Silverstone is, and it's like one of the meccas, and it's nothing like Silverstone. And winning at Silverstone is just so special, and it's where F1 was really born. F1 is Silverstone. Like there's a sort of, like, other than Monaco, right? There's a sort of, at Spa, like Silverstone is like considered one of the 4 pillars of motorsport. Continue, Brian.
Well, yeah. So then obviously the race happens. Incredible race. Lewis wins the race, and it's like we're like, oh my God, where to party at? Like, let's go. We're expecting, we're gonna go try to capture content. Let's do man on the street. We come outside, we're expecting to, like, as if England just won the World Cup energy. And the energy was like, ugh, gotta get out of the parking lot, gotta get out of here. Like, the traffic's gonna be horrible getting out of here. It's like, can we see some excitement? We were let down by the British fans.
It was wet and muddy, and everyone was like shuffling out, giving very Ellis Island vibes. It was like, what?
It was giving huddled masses.
Yes, exactly.
You expected it to go off in Milton Keynes, didn't you?
Did you see Philadelphia? You see Philadelphia after the Super Bowl? Okay, that's what I wanted.
I mean, when Charles Leclerc wins in Monza.
I'm sorry that we let you down. I feel a sense of duty and responsibility. I let you down as a Northamptonian. We did not show our American friends a good time. I'm sorry.
Well, the race was so amazing. We're like, it's the best racing, but then we were but it feels like there's maybe a disparity. There's a difference between, in growing up in the UK, it's like football's the thing. And then F1 is like maybe for, like, the kids at the back, the nerdy kid. Yeah, it's just like it doesn't have that. Well, it's like the jocks go watch football and the nerds watch F1.
Yeah,
well, listen, Natalie, I can't even get my kids into F1, for God's sake. They are more interested in football than Formula One. In fact, I can tell you a little story where we between the race. Look, don't get me wrong, they will watch it, but they have an encyclopedic knowledge of football, specifically Brentford Football Club. And they humour me. They'll turn it on and they'll watch the race and they'll ask, how was the weekend, mummy? But they're not, they're not nerds in the sense that you need to be if you want to support F1. So we go on holiday and we're trying to, I always try to juggle it whereby I bring the kids and involve them as much as I can in what I do, because I think that's important. And we go out to the Middle East, and I'm about to do the Bahrain Grand Prix. And I was out. My son runs down to the beach, and he sees this cute little kid on the beach, and he comes back and he says, "Can I play with that little boy?" And I said, Sure. Yeah, no worries. Play football with him. And then he goes away and he comes back and he says, "Oh, his dad just wants to meet you, just, to." And I said, "Yeah, sure. It's Kimi Raikkonen's son." I was just like, my son had no clue who Kimi Raikkonen was, which in a way was very sweet. But then, when you get to that awkward moment where kids just want to do everything together, like we're not just talking like one game of football. They were inseparable. So literally I'm seeing Kimi at breakfast, at lunch and dinner. And he's basically babysitting my children for me. So you may not know anything about Kimi, that you may think you understand Kimi, you may think you know Kimi, but here's an extra string to his bow. He's unbelievable with children. And he sat in a ball pit with my 2 kids and looked after them for most of my holiday.
That checks out because he's a kid. He's a big child.
There you go.
The most surprising part of that story is that he wanted to talk to you.
He didn't.
Oh,
he wanted to talk to the children. He wanted to just check that, it was legit and it was okay that my kid wouldn't play with his kid. But it was it just made me laugh because he walked around the corner and I went, "Oh my God, it's Kimi Raikkonen." Like, my kid had no clue. He just goes, "Oh, his dad's here. Can you come and talk to my mum?" And pulls Kimi in.
He was like, so Kimi was basically like, "Hey, can your son come out and play?"
Yeah.
Like, that is kind of the vibe.
With Robin Raikkonen, who, by the way, is going to be... Have you seen Robin Raikkonen?
Well,
he is going to be insane. I mean, you could see he's got something special about him. He was unbelievable with Keepy Uppies, and he was like 5 at the time. So the kid is skillful, and you've got parents like that. So, but yeah, it was a nice touch. That
was that like getting breakfast with him? You've had obviously like interviewed him and had to deal with him like in a professional context, but like what, I'm sure you have lots of stories like that, but was that like, what's breakfast like with Kimi? Because kids are friends.
It was more that my son just didn't want to leave Robin's side, and vice versa. They just clicked. They just had a shared passion for football, and they just wanted. Kids just get mildly obsessed with each other, don't they?
Right.
We just said goodbye. You want to go back, and so it was just slightly awkward every time. It was like, "Oh, hi, yes, okay, we'll just sort of sit here again and." Don't talk about F1. Whatever you do, don't talk about F1.
Right.
And actually, Wilf said to me, "Did you know that Robin's dad is a Formula One driver?" I said, "Yeah, thanks for that, Wilf. Yeah, I've just, worked in the sport for over a decade. Cheers, mate."
Did you feel comfortable leaving your kid with Kimi Raikkonen? Because he, we read his book. He would get into some crazy trouble beyond his partying days, just like jumping off stuff, injuring himself like in between races,
Well, I tell you what, he was astonishingly good with children. He was brilliant. It really surprised me in a very pleasant way. What a nice guy.
Venkers, this episode is brought to you by BetMGM. Come see what's new at BetMGM. Score bigger when you win with boost tokens, odd boost tokens, and more. Even if your bet doesn't hit, we've got you covered with no sweat tokens. And that's not all. Sign up with BetMGM today, and you'll have access to countless betting options, including new look, same-game parlays, teasers, live bets, and so much more. Take advantage of these offerings and be sure to use the bonus code DADDY when signing up with BetMGM. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY for New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 for Massachusetts. 21 and over. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP for Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF for Iowa. 1-800-981-0023 for Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Well, to continue on, Kimi, I watched this video of when you went ice driving with him.
Oh my God.
Around this ice course. And what was so funny because you were doing it, you were having a great time, then you like asked to drive, then you're driving, and you know it's funny because sometimes you watch these things and drivers when they're driving, they're like, I'm chilling, but if they're in the passenger seat, if they're not in control, they freak out. But when you're driving with Kimi on ice and you crashed the car, he looked like he was like at a spa. He could not have been. It was like his heart rate. He was like, yeah, Natalie, fucking try drifting. Sure, you know.
I mean, seriously, that was ridiculous because actually at the time, obviously I wrote the car off. Like it was like, and Renault, which was the team at the time, were like, get out of the car. You are driving a world champion. Get out. They got seriously pissed off with me. Like, understandably. But I was like, look, I did ask for help. Anyway, Kimi was like, relax. Just don't worry about it. Like, he was, as you say, super chill. And then it got something like 500,000 hits in like 2 days. And I think they cottoned on to the fact that actually it was quite funny. And then they chilled out and they kind of, let the footage go. But it was, I felt a lot of responsibility because I was like, yeah, what if he can't drive at the weekend because I've crashed the car into a wall, ice wall? I mean, he probably should have watched Dancing on Ice and realized stay away from Pinkham and ice altogether.
Right. Oh, how did you do on that show?
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
I mean, in the stills, it looks very nice.
Thank you.
You look very elegant.
I don't think I was very elegant.
Okay, wait, I want to go back, young Natalie, early days, kind of the hustle towards, some of these early jobs, kind of like your journey into F1. How did F1 kind of like come onto your radar, become a job opportunity, like that whole story?
It is a hustle. You're totally right. And I think when you don't have dependents, you can kind of just throw caution to the wind and just go for it. Like freelancing, as long as you keep enough money in the back pocket for a rainy day. But look, I came to London with nothing. I mean, I came to London and was so skint that I shared a house with 6 girls. There were only 3 bedrooms. 3 of them were Virgin air hostesses, which meant that we could actually have a bed to ourselves most of the time. But when they came back, all they wanted to do was party. And then I got booted out of the bed and had to sleep on the couch. But this was like just growing up in London, and you felt like a massive sense of freedom in that moment as well. And then I would just accept any freelancing running jobs, researcher. The trick is to make really crap tea, and then nobody wants you to be a runner, so they promote you to researcher. So they go, just don't accept a cup of tea from that new girl. So like, you know what, we could just bump her up to researcher role. And actually, I wanted to learn and understand what went on behind the camera before I worked in front of it. I always did have this ambition to be in front of camera, but I was also a little bit shy and a little bit perhaps just a bit nervous about doing that. So I thought, if I understand the industry better, then maybe I'll do a better job in front of the camera. And then my first job, you mentioned it, was poker, which again was great because anyone who watches poker is either pissed or half asleep on the couch anyway. So it didn't matter if you made mistakes. Great way to cut your teeth in live TV. And we traveled around Europe and it was just great. It was just an adventure. Like every week was an adventure. And then eventually I knew I wanted to work in sport. I found poker just a bit too like smoky casinos. It wasn't really my vibe. I like being outdoors and, doing a sport. And then eventually BBC 5 Live came to me and said, would I like to be their pit lane reporter? And I thought, that sounds great. And I didn't really have a huge amount keeping me in the UK, although my then boyfriend, now husband, might be a bit offended to hear that. But he was quite encouraging of it as well. So he was like, yeah, go for it. And it was probably, I don't know, 15 races a season then. I can't actually remember, but I did all of them, and it was, it was great. We just kind of went from race to race and learned about the different cultures, like immersed ourselves in every country we went to. And what a privilege. I mean, it was just brilliant.
And that first year was what, 2010?
So my first year for Five Live was 2011. And then my first year for Sky was 2012.
I see.
Yeah. Getting back to the poker, really quickly.
Yeah.
When you're in like one of those smoky, depressing rooms, do you try to match the energy, or are you trying to like elevate? Because like when you're in a pit lane, of course,
elevate. Yeah.
So you're like screaming in like.
Well, I don't know about screaming, but yeah.
He's like,
but you're like giving,
aces.
but you're giving pit lane energy. Aces. You have to give. Is that hard, giving pit lane energy in a sort of different sort of environment?
I think if you didn't give any energy, you'd fall asleep because, I mean, you know what casinos are like. There's no windows. There are no clocks. So you completely lose any idea of daytime, night, day, whatever. And there would quite often be these long gaps where they would just be focusing on the play. And then you'd have to like bounce in and do quite a high energy link or interview. So you had to kind of, keep your own energy up in order to not just nod off at the side of the table.
Right.
So yeah, look, I love poker, and it was a great intro into live TV, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do forever. I really wanted to get out, and F1 for me was just this incredible opportunity. So yeah, I look back with great fondness.
So 2011, 2012, you get in there. What was your like F1 knowledge going into that? Were you like a casual? Were you like obsessed? What was the learning curve towards like actually working in the space?
So I remember going to Silverstone, the mother of all parties, the mecca of the rave.
Yeah.
I remember going there as a kid with my dad and brother and loving it and just, thinking it was great. And actually it was probably more Sam, my brother's obsession than it was mine, Formula One. But I obviously always had an interest in it. It was appointment to view television on a Sunday afternoon in our house. There was a thing called Ski Sunday, there was Rugby Special, and there was F1. They were the three things that we would just religiously sit down and watch together as a family. So, what was great for me personally was that, and now everyone's much more kind of exposed because everyone's got their own channels and the influencers out there, they're making themselves heard. And I think that's brilliant for the sport, by the way. It's just opened it up so well. But back then, to do a year with BBC Five Live was great because it was slightly under the radar and I could just find my feet, understand how it all worked, because it's very different from the outside looking in, like the workings, the inner workings and the processes by which you have to work are very different than you might imagine. And just understanding where to be at what time. I remember being in the pit lane for the first time and thinking, I have no idea where to stand. Like, am I in the way? I probably still am now, slightly in the way, but you get a sixth sense for it. You learn about, where you can be and where and you also learn about, you go to this press officer if you need to speak to this driver, and this is the way you do it. And that was all a great, steep learning curve for me, but one that I could do kind of without too much attention. I put it this way, it would be a bit like Ollie Behrman going in for Haas, getting 3 races under his belt before being promoted to a full-time seat. Just, finding his feet.
Right. Okay, those first few years, who were like your allies? Like, were there drivers that were like, oh, okay, you're cool, like I got a good interview with you? Like, who gave you the easiest time, who gave you the hardest time in terms of
the easiest time without a doubt would have been Daniel, because he started at the same time as me, and it was, but we were both new, and so that was great. We kind of helped each other out to that extent. We were both a little bit like rabbit in the headlights. And then the hardest would have been Michael Schumacher. I mean, I cannot tell you how scared I was of interviewing him. I mean, it was a joke. It was like, that was my very, very, very first interview ever in Formula One was with Michael Schumacher. And it was the Australian Grand Prix, and he finished his race prematurely. And they were just in my ear, and I inadvertently just grabbed him. I don't know what the hell I was doing. I just grabbed him, and I was squeezing his arm. And I was like, and then he like looked down at his arm and looked back at me as if to say, why are you touching me? And I was like, I'm so sorry. At this point, I'm live. So that was such a baptism by fire. It was ridiculous. I had a similar experience with Fernando Alonso where I actually, you might have seen or read and heard about this interview, but I actually dropped the C-bomb in my interview with Fernando Alonso.
Whoa.
How did that come about?
I'm glad you've asked, Matt. So I thought that I could and should speak Spanish to him because I'd done Spanish at school, and I thought that might be a nice way to break the ice. I'll talk Spanish to him. And do you either of you speak Spanish?
Not well.
Un poquito.
Un poquito solamente. Okay, well, I wanted to say, how about an interview with me? Now, with is con, and
Yes.
me is yo. Y-O.
Conmigo.
Exactly. The nuance of the language is you have to say conmigo, not coño, because coño, I'm sorry for swearing, means the C word. So I said, una entrevista, coño. And he said, I don't think you mean to say this, Natalie. But it's very nice that you try to speak Spanish.
Amazing.
I mean,
Wow.
I went so red and was like, started to get that like upper lip sweat happening.
Yeah.
But he never forgot it. And it almost was a good icebreaker for us because he goes, hola, I remember you.
Does he call you Conyo for the rest of your life?
No, I don't think we can keep saying this because you might have some Spanish speaking listeners who are offended. I don't know how offensive it is. I'm sure someone will tell me. But
We'll find out. It's bad.
In English, it's super offensive. Like, you can't say it. So, of course, that was,
Right.
I mean, it's like a Bridget Jones moment. It's like, what a clown. I've never forgiven myself.
He's still in there. He's still in that paddock. Does he still give you does he still give you shit about that? What's
No,
Alonso?
he's great.
We're obsessed with Alonso. So we're
me too.
Any Alonso stories are welcome here.
Me too. He's fantastic. Actually, when he went away and then came back to the sport, he actually said to me and a number of my colleagues, you know what? I do understand now kind of what you're doing. And I understand that, because the last thing that we ever want to do is shove a microphone under someone's nose and stress them out. But he had a sort of greater appreciation of the bigger picture once he left and then returned. And he was a different person, actually, when he came back. He was much more relaxed. And he's just incredible. Look, long may he stay in our sport. I know that there's an argument to keep bringing in rookies. And, we've got 6 this year. That's fantastic. And it keeps the grid moving and it keeps the energy up and keeps the competitive juices flowing. But I do think there's a lot to be said for having the King of Spain on the grid as well.
Yeah. Well, he probably came to appreciate you because he needed you to tell him what was happening now that he wasn't there.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to say he needed me to translate for him.
Right. All right, guys, we're here to talk about our favorite sponsor, Dollar Shave Club. It's no surprise that facial hair is personal. It grows on your face. We all grow it, shave it, style it differently, and we think that's pretty fucking great. It all makes us more interesting. That's why in this club, we make the razors and you make the rules, baby. That's right. I'm not going to lie. I thought the Dollar Shave Club just made razors, but they do so much more than that. Whether you're going smooth shaven or maintaining a beard, Dollar Shave Club offers shave and grooming products that are always high quality and never, ever overpriced. Let me introduce you to some of their top sellers that we're going to make your grooming routine feel like a spa. First up, we got the Dollar Shave Club Series 6 Blade Razor. This isn't just any razor, okay? It's like a mini vacation for your face. With 6 stainless steel blades and vitamin E infused lubricant strip, the razor delivers the closest, most comfortable shave imaginable. It's so comfy, your skin might want to just take a nap afterwards. Plus, the precision trimmer is perfect for those little detail areas because we know how important those are. Also, they have an amazing series of products that prep your skin for your shave and take care of it after. We got the shave butter. It's the top selling shaving aid. It's true. I use it, and it's so much more helpful than when you put all the white, puffy gunk on your face, because you're like, am I even getting this stuff? This goes on clear, so you can see exactly where you're shaving. But don't take our word for it, Vegas. Try for yourself at Dollar Shave Club. Products are now available everywhere, so you can order them from their website, Amazon, or get them at your favorite retailer near you. Alternatively, you can visit their site right now for 20% off, $20 or more. Get your products delivered right to your door. Visit dollarshaveclub.com/red flags and use the promo code red flags to get 20% off, $20 or more. And remember, whenever you shave, welcome to the club. Vankas, this episode is brought to you by Skims for Men. Yeah, did you know that they made Skims for the fellas? I didn't. Now I do, and I'm glad that I do because I got a couple pairs of the Skims underwear, and they are amazing. They are strong but soft, if that makes any sense to you. I think with boxer briefs, I got 2 pairs of boxer briefs. I got the stretch 5-inch and the cotton 5-inch boxer brief, and they're both great. The stretch, they're great for a workout. They're firm, but they're also gentle. This is what Skims is offering you, and it's so important that you have good pairs. With those pairs of underwear where you look at them and you're like, yes, today is going to be a good day. That's what I feel when I look at my Skims pairs. My girlfriend's been, wearing Skims, talking about how great the products are, and I'm like, well, that's great for you, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Now it does with Skims. And you can shop Skims Men at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcasts in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. It would help us out, feel great, and help out the red flags. That's what it's all about. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for your Valentine's Day or for yourself, Skims just launched their best Valentine's shop ever, available in sizes men, women, kids, and even pets. Give your pet a Skims Valentine's Day gift. What are you doing? Get on it and tell them that we sent you.
You spoke earlier about there's all these things that people don't know about, what it takes to produce television, the ins and outs of your job. Well, what's the biggest example of that, you'd say?
I think just from talking to people now, one of the biggest things, and it sounds simple, is the amount of voices going on in your ear and the intensity at a racetrack. I think that you have to try and keep as calm as you possibly can and learn to filter out the words that you need to ingest and process and just sort of filter out the rest. It is a strange one, I think, because the energy is so intense at a racetrack and because there is a lot going on. You've got a director, a producer, you've got the PA counting you down to breaks and into VT and everything else. Then you've got your interviewee, and your pundits, and you're trying to throw the conversation around all of them. But it's a challenge that I love. It's part of live TV that's thrilling, and hopefully each time that you do it, you get better at it. But we're all works in progress.
Well, I'm curious what we found. I'm curious what you think we're going on to the British thing. Got a bunch of British drivers on the grid.
Okay.
Now.
Well,
We've got
4.
Lando, George, Lewis, Behrman. Now.
Yeah.
And when we were,
why didn't he get an Ollie? Why did he not get an Ollie? You said Lando, George, Lewis, and Behrman.
I don't know.
We don't know him like that yet.
We don't know him like that. I'm not on a first name basis with the kid. I'm curious because when we were in Silverstone, we thought it was just going to be a sea of Lewis, a sea of Mercedes gear. And we were like, whoa, there's a lot of McLaren gear out here. I'm curious what you kind of see as the future of kind of who's coming for the crown. Is Lando going to be
British
the top
crown?
British crown of
I know that Lando's merch flew off the shelves. I mean, he was hugely popular, and his grandstand sold out, in a matter of minutes, hours, whatever, but it was quick. when you go, I feel like he's really captured the imagination, hasn't he? Because he's got this sort of cheeky chappy way about him, but he's also, a great racer who's prepared to go for some brave moves. George has got a real charm about him as well. I mean, he is just a lovely guy.
We love George.
Yeah, I love him. He's great.
But George
he's
is
great
like, people sometimes don't know what to do with George because he's kind of, he's like an enigma. He's kind of like, he's like proper, but then he's like, will swear on the radio like crazy. And he gets into, he's really fiery. Like he gets into like spats and fights with people, but then he's kind of like.
Yeah, he comes off. Off like vicious. Oh, sorry. He comes off like super posh. But then he's like vicious. You know what I mean? It's like there's like some dissonance.
I don't know if he's vicious, is he?
Well, we like that about him. It's like
Are you talking about his little spat with Max?
Well, yeah, but there's a few things like he crashed into Max in Baku, I think last year during the sprint race, and he was kind of like, got in Max's face. Like he seems to be unafraid of like stepping up to Max, which I think a lot of people are afraid. Like no one wants to mess with Max. It feels like, and George is unafraid. We kind of love that about him.
Definitely. Look, you've got to realize that there's only 20 of these guys in the world. I mean, the skill level is insane. And there has to be, there's very, very little separating them. I mean, you could just look at the tenths, hundredths of seconds that separate a grid on a Saturday going into the Grand Prix. The talent is pretty evenly matched. So what is going to make the difference? We talked just now about the mental side of things, but also just having that ruthless streak once the visor comes down. And I think that's the key, isn't it? You can be Mr. Nice Guy around the track. Look, don't be an idiot. Don't go for moves that aren't on I think there's a code, isn't there, amongst the drivers, and they know who will race hard but fair. But equally, don't be scared to assert yourself. And I think that is going to be really interesting in 2025 because you've got these rookies coming onto the grid that do need to assert themselves. They are going up against drivers that they grew up worshipping, like Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. So they have got to, you get such a brief opportunity to really make your mark. I'm thinking of Jack Doohan, for example, coming in. Talk about pressure. His first race is his home race, and he's got Franco Colapinto breathing down his neck for this seat. He has got to come out of the blocks and really make an impression fast. I think he's got it in him. His dad is obviously a multiple champion himself on two wheels. So I think he's got that winning instinct in him. But he honestly could not be a nicer guy out of the car. So I think you can have both. And I think that's what makes it exciting and interesting viewing, entertaining viewing. You're going to see some great racing, but also you can buy into these characters, which is what really Drive to Survive was so brilliant at, was introducing us to these characters, making us feel invested in them so that when you watch them race on a Sunday, you went, yeah, I like this guy. I could sit down and have a beer, a pizza with this guy. He could be my mate. And I think that is what we're learning. They feel like the fans' friends, don't they? In a way that they seem more accessible than I think any grid before them has done. Maybe that's because of social media, maybe because of that's Drive to Survive and TV, and they just feel accessible.
Well, who else is accessible is your Sky Sports F1 fellow team members. So we want to ask you some questions. Rapid fire style about your.
Now this is pressure.
Your coworkers. Okay. Of your Sky Sports F1 team members, who has the best style?
Naomi Schiff. Without a doubt. I mean, she's not afraid to just go for it. And I think she looks phenomenal.
If you're in jail, who are you calling to bail you out?
Ooh. I think Bernie Collins, because she backs everything up with irrefutable data. So if she is in your corner, you're getting out of there.
Okay. Yeah. Who would be the best at planning a bachelor or bachelorette party?
Oh, I can't use names twice, can I? She's good at that.
Sure.
You can do it twice. Yeah, you can.
Can I?
Yeah.
Mind you, I think Crofty would be, and Lasers, I feel like it could be a good team effort. I feel like if you got Crofty, Lasers and Gnomes on like a party committee, it would be a great weekend.
I like it. Who would do the best on Dancing on Ice?
It's definitely not me. I think I would go for someone with good core strength.
Okay.
And sort of poise. So I would say Anne Davidson.
Okay. I was like, definitely not Martin Brundle. How much of grid walk Martin Brundle do you see like in everyday life? How...
That is a great question.
Yeah.
So he is just a brilliant colleague because he's so fair and he's so assured that when he speaks, it's just value. Every word is value. So he won't speak unless he's adding something to the conversation that you really need. And I feel like that is his grid walk to a T. He limits his words. I mean, he will... Why use 20 when you can use 2? You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what he does in life generally.
Mm.
He is just such a solid, decent, great guy. I'm actually very lucky because I'm now considering all my colleagues. I'm thinking, just a great bunch.
Yeah. Is there like a do you guys kind of like enjoy his awkward kind of quippy moments on the grid as much as the fans do? Like, it's, you know.
So what is the dynamic there? Because it doesn't seem like he wants to do it. Is there like a gun pointed at him somewhere just off screen? Like, because what is the dynamic there? Because he doesn't seem like he wants to do it, and yet he does it every week. So
and we love
and it's the best bit of the show, right?
Yeah.
It makes it
Yeah,
better
I know.
for us. Yeah.
I know. It's great, isn't it? But you do kind of, I think that, you know, he's made an art of this sort of edge of your seat telly where there's just enough jeopardy for you just to like look out from behind the pillow and think, what is going to happen? But you all tune in for it, right? I mean, it's it's great TV. And I don't know how he does it, because when you get to a grid, and you might have seen it at Silverstone, it's just so intense. It's so packed. And there's people coming everywhere. And he's got to have someone in his ear kind of helping him spot if someone's at the front or the back. And, you know, sometimes you walk through and you're just willing for him to see someone, because what if he doesn't? Well, that is part of its charm. That's why you tune in. And I think that's what makes it unique. There isn't really, for me, anything out there, anything like Martin's Grid Walk.
No.
Or Ted's Notebook.
You see, Ted is just a unique, wonderful creature in his own right as well. That notebook kind of started organically. He just started talking, and it was just great TV, because stuff would happen. It was just a continuous monologue whereby even if things went wrong, he would just carry on. You know how we might go, oh, can I just do that again? And give a more polished delivery. That never seemed to bother Ted. He was like, and again, that's what made it so endearing and so watchable, is that, you know, you might see something swinging behind the back of his head, or someone walking in front of camera, or Pete, the cameraman, disappearing up the pit lane.
That's my favorite part.
Who, Pete?
When the cameraman like leaves him and he's just still talking.
Yeah.
And then the cameraman like finds him again. It looks like a homeless guy in a subway station who's just talking.
Ted or Pete?
No, Ted. It's like
the camera's not on him, but he's like talking and kind of like walking around.
And you're thinking, are you even doing anything here, or are you just chatting to yourself? No, but also I love the value that there's so much content in the notebook. And you think, I like watching it like as a recap of quali or the race, because you just get enough on each team to go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, right, okay, that was my takeaway. That was his takeaway, and that would be mine as well. But then he'll weave in little human stories, because I think something that we're conscious of at Sky is to shine the light on the heroes up and down the grid that you wouldn't necessarily hear from. And that's something that Ted's notebook is good at, or Ted is good at bringing into the notebook, is that you do get a sense of other characters that you might not otherwise know.
Do you think he gets resentful every time Crofty says 2 seconds, Ted?
Not
he gets interrupted all the time. 2 seconds, Ted.
2 seconds, Ted.
Because do you think it's like he's done all this research? He's like running up and down the pit wall, and he's like like scrabbling together like a story out of nowhere, and he's like huffing and puffing trying to tell this story, and it's like 2 secs, Ted, like Lando Norris is about to like sigh about his left tire. Like it's like he gets interrupted for the dumbest reasons sometimes.
Yeah.
I know, but do you know what? It's that they've worked together and they've known each other for so long that again, it's like this, dovetailing that just happens naturally, and it happens in the office, even when the cameras aren't rolling. That's how they kind of talk to each other. So it's it's very authentic. Like
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
No, but Crofty, that what you hear on air, that is Crofty. He is always broadcasting. Like breakfast, good morning, Pinkers. It's always,
Oh wow.
Right.
So he always brings
you think
energy.
When he goes to sleep at night and he turns off his bedside lamp, he goes, lights out and away we go. There we go. Okay, we've got a couple of fan questions and we're going to show you some pictures and then we'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, this is from Yana Villaverde. I am sorry to this person.
Do it again, Brian. Do it with conviction.
I don't think it's gonna help.
I'm like Ted. I just roll with it. Yana Villaverde. Okay. Which F1 circuit is your favorite?
I'm just going to say Silverstone to really piss you off.
Totally.
No, I'm not. I love
British
Silverstone
bias.
because I love Silverstone because I literally grew up 10 minutes from there. But no, it's not my favorite. I love Monaco because it's just ridiculous. How you're able to pack in a track, a paddock, the pit lane into this tiny little space and then navigate your way around and call it a race weekend. I do not know, but it's just got a charm about it. It's just brilliant fun. I really think that should be on everyone's bucket list. But every single race brings something to the table now, and I think that's what Liberty have been amazing at, is saying actually you've got to have high standards. If you're going to host a race, it has to be worth it. It has to tick a lot of boxes now. And so everyone's raised their game. So there isn't a bad Grand Prix. I really mean that. Baku's a great race. And it's kind of a bit of a hidden gem. There's so many cool places on the calendar. So I think you boys need to get out there and get to some more races. We're gonna goddamn soon.
Okay. Well, if there's someone at Sky we could talk to that might pay for us to attend and give us some media credentials.
This is from One Confused Penguin. What's the silliest thing that you've seen a driver do that can be repeated on camera?
Wow. Silliest thing.
Prank.
I mean, I remember seeing Carlos and Lando, if you didn't see the feature, holding a thing of milk and trying to drive the car with this thing of milk and getting just covered in milk. And it was like, I don't know why this is as funny as it is, but it really tickled me. And it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous telly that then went on loop on the channel and everyone loved it. It's because Lando used to drink milk, didn't he? He used to love drinking milk. He doesn't anymore. And so I think that's why we did it. But we've done some ridiculous features. We did making pasta with pasta. Pasta Maldonado and I made pasta together. I mean, that's got to go down as TV gold right there.
Bankers, we are stoked to continue our partnership with Ricky. The best canned alcoholic beverage on the market just got bigger and better. Ricky has a 7% ABV, and they've just launched 24-ounce big boys with 3 shots per can, which is absolutely absurd. The flavors are all of your favorite cocktails packaged in a glorious, reasonable can. Get 3 times as drunk for just under $4. Ricky's where it's at. And, this weekend, I'm up in the Berkshires with my girl, and the only thing better than being in this beautiful, beautiful scenery is Ricky. So you best believe I'm bringing the big boy cranberry Rickies with me, baby. So head to rickyspirits.com to find out where to get Ricky near you, and follow Friday Beers and Ricky Spirits to stay up to date with upcoming Ricky contests and giveaways. You've done a bunch of hot laps with various drivers over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Is there one that sticks out as the scariest? Who would you never get into a car again with?
I mean, I love to go fast.
Yeah.
I think something changed in me when I became a mum, that I then became a bit more conscious of my safety. We did this one shoot with Kimi and Antonio Giovinazzi.
Yeah.
And what it was I had to go on the back of a jet ski with Antonio, and Simon Lasers had to go on the back with Kimi, and we had to do this race. Okay.
Oh.
I think Antonio was so determined not to be outskilled on the water by his kind of more dominant teammate, being a world champion and everything else, that he just had no awareness that we could just both be killed. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was so scared, and my knuckles were just completely white, and I was holding on to him, and I was thinking, well, we're both just going to fly off. And we were going so fast on this water that the water was like concrete beneath us. I was thinking, just forget about your ego. You don't need to win this. It doesn't matter. I need to stay alive. It was insane. But I realized in that moment that there it is. I can't believe you got that.
Speaking of which, there we go.
Oh my God,
Perfect
I can't believe you got that picture.
If you're listening, you go hop over to the YouTube. We've got a picture of Natalie on the back of this jet ski here.
Are you right back there?
Oh my God, you've triggered me. I mean, I am back there in that moment. And it is ridiculous. All these drivers, like, whatever you give them, they want to compete. They want to go fast. They want to just beat each other. And I guess that's just part of their psyche, right? It's in their DNA. But I was like, I want no part of this. Let me off.
All right, we got a couple more other pictures to show you here. Okay, we gotta ask you about this iconic moment in Monaco where Daniel threw you into the pool at the end of your interview.
So if you remember, the year before, he'd had that terrible pit stop, and he was set to win the race and everything else. And it was, it was a moment that I then brought up in the interview, and it just threw me in. Well, I didn't do very well. I should have just held on to him and dragged him with me. But I think I do remember getting out and then like hugging him and getting him soaked as well. Yes. It was funny. Look, I had just had a blow dry, and that had cost me about €300. It really annoyed me because Monaco is so expensive. I remember going to pay the bill, and they went, "This will be €300." And I went, "It's 20 quid in Brentford. Are you joking?"
Yeah.
And then within about an hour, I ended up in the water. It was the most expensive blow dry I've ever had.
That is tough. Was this before, or this was before? I'm assuming before you had asked him to be the godfather to your kids.
Oh yeah. No. I had 2 kids by then. So this would have been. Hang on. So this would have been the year he won, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
No, yes.
No.
This was, I think, the Thursday before he won.
Okay. Yeah. He had
when he was like
going into that weekend.
But didn't he win 2016, was it?
No, he won in 2018. The bad one was in 2016. Or if he said that was for last year, then it would have been 2017.
Maybe he said in it that was for bringing up 2016.
Oh, right. Giving him bad, sort of like putting that in his mind.
Yeah, and then he went on to win the race. And do you know what? Honestly, that was just such a special moment because his mum and dad were there, and it was just like against all the odds. It was like holding on. Just holding on for that victory, defending so well against Vettel. That will really go down as such an amazing moment. And that's what I mean about the magic of Monaco, is that it was just such a special moment. I think everybody was willing for him to win it after what had happened a couple of years earlier. So, yeah, it was a cool moment.
All right, we got, we talked about this briefly. This is you in the car with Kimi. He seems to be he's loving it. Because he's smizing. And your eyes look closed, arguably, here.
That might explain why I slammed it into the wall.
Yeah.
Open your eyes would be a good start. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, this was great when you had the kind of the youngins, the streamer boys, Charles, Albon, Lando, and George. What's like
the
interacting
Which
with these
quartet?
kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
like these kids, like you got, trying to relate to these kids who've been on their computers their whole lives. What's it? Like?
Do you know what it was? Is that this was still in COVID, so we couldn't be together as a
Right.
group. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the camaraderie on the grid, and that actually what I love is the fact that they do get on really well. Like that's genuine. But then once the visor comes down, and they do race hard, and I think you can have it both. And I think that's what's been revolutionary for the sport, is to have these very relatable young guys who people are now growing up with and seeing them come into the different stages of their career, but they have still got each other's backs. I really think that, because you notice that like when Lando won in Miami, they all went to him. Like they genuinely were happy for him to have finally got his maiden win. And it's the same for, Alex is such a lovely guy, like genuinely lovely bloke. But again, a great racer once he has to be.
God.
Oh, for God's sake. How could you do this? Oh my God. That was Andrei Lipanov, my Russian partner. He poor guy, that is shocking. Oh my God, it's so cheesy, isn't it?
We've discussed it enough. We won't let you relive it. Okay, here's a picture of you with Shaq. Do you have
that was
this
Vegas
moment, or yeah? What's your favorite celebrity encounter?
That was great. That was great. That was Vegas inaugural Grand Prix there. I mean, that was such a buzz to go to Vegas and see them racing down the strip. And actually, this is what the sport has been so brilliant at, really opening up and making it a kind of party to which everyone's invited. Like, I do think there's a real sense of community around Formula One now. Like, I felt like you two are my mates for months before even coming on this pod, because I've followed you and I've watched you, and you swear and everything. I mean, you Americans who
On
swear,
purpose.
what's not to love? I know, right?
That's right. We won't have to face a month ban if we do it. So that's why.
Well, there you go.
Now it's a political act. We stand in solidarity with Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda. That's our end goal now.
You're doing it for the boys.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's see. You did some capture stuff here.
Yeah, the F1 game.
So the F1 game. I see.
I obviously told you earlier that my kids like F1 and they humour me with it, but they're more interested in football. But my son did come back the other day, and I said, I was saying something cheesy to them, like I normally do, like, the proudest thing in my life is being your mother. And my son turned around, he went, no, it's not. The coolest thing you've ever done is be in the F1 game. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll take that. Yeah, so I finally won some brownie points with my kids for being in the F1 game, because he's a little gamer, my son. He loves it. Karoon. I haven't even mentioned Karoon. He's just written a kid's book, you know. He's just sent me a copy of his kid's book. It's great. Now, that was us at Goodwood. He's a great colleague to have, because his knowledge of the sport, the history of the sport, is exceptional. He's just got this encyclopedic knowledge in terms of, you know, you could say to him, what happened in the 1987 race in, you know, wherever, and he would be able to tell you.
Right.
Insane brain, that man.
Who do you feel like you've learned the most from in your time working in F1? Like who do you always like kind of like learn a new fact or kind of get a new insight from? So everyone on the team is good at sort of sharing. Martin Brundle has always been a very approachable, learned friend, as in, you know, he's taught me a lot over the years. But Bernie, actually, in recent years has been incredible. And what I love about her is that there's no dumb questions. You know, she doesn't make you feel inadequate for asking. And I had this moment in Mexico where I was definitely slightly frazzled from the heat and the very long on-air time. And I was asking a question about why Perez was out of his box at the start of the race. And it was just
didn't make any sense to me that in such a technologically advanced sport, something as simple as being outside of the box would bring with it a penalty that would ultimately ruin his race. I mean, I think other things did as well, but, that was significant. And what Bernie was so great, I got a bit tongue-tied on air and I embarrassed myself. Well, at least that's what people told me on Twitter. Or X, sorry. But Bernie was like, do you know what? There isn't a hard and fast rule on this. So actually don't be ashamed, because I'm telling you, there'll be a lot of people out there that don't know the answer to that either. So that's what I love about her, is that, again, it's this, she helps create this feeling of accessibility for the sport. And I think that's so important, because I think there's a lot of young fans, new fans, that might be too scared and think, is that a stupid question? And if they don't learn and they don't know, then they don't get a greater appreciation for the sport. So Bernie is brilliant at that. She'd be a brilliant teacher in a school, because she would take a difficult subject and make it simple.
All right. Before we let you go, Bernie's taught you a lot. Let's put it to the test. 2025. We got to get some predictions. Who do you think's winning this
God, I hate predictions.
Who do you think's winning the constructors? Who do you think's winning this championship?
I mean, what I love about 2025 is it is wide open. I think McLaren will obviously come into it with momentum, having won the title at the end of last year, and that's great. So I think they'll hit the ground running with that, with both drivers. Oscar is no slouch. He had some incredible moments last year. And then I really think it's wide open. Ferrari, I'd love to see Lewis perform well there. I mean, that's an iconic moment right there, isn't it? So, okay, I think that... I think Mercedes will do something, actually. I think they will... then I look
Stars,
at Antonelli
they are
and I
just
think,
like us, honestly.
yeah, I mean, the truth is we don't know. Antonelli, I think, is really interesting to me, because I think he has shown such brilliance, but I think there may be a few rookie errors, peppered through his season, because that's inevitable, right? But on the out and out performance, I think he's going to be exceptional.
Okay.
I hope he is, because he's got a lot of pressure, hasn't he?
So you heard it here. Natalie's predicting Kimi for the WDC in 2025.
25.
We got her down. We got her prediction.
You know what? That's a hot take.
That's a hot take.
And you know what? If that happens, you will look like a genius.
Yeah,
and even if it doesn't, no one can. They'll say, it was a,
it's a hot
threw
take.
It all on a number in roulette. She threw it all on double zero.
Love
all
it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What a way to go out with that
What a way to
prediction.
go
Thank
out.
you. Thank you, Natalie.
Well, out of the sport altogether.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? All that jazz.
What, at my home? Well, you want me to give my home address?
Your address and
weird.
whatever the British equivalent is of a social security number.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we've got quite a chilled few weeks now until the start of the season. My first race is going to be China. So I'm sort of flip-flopping with Simon. China will be my first race, and then it's looking like a busy, brilliant, exciting year. I can't wait to get my teeth stuck into it.
Love it. We start this podcast with Was Up Vankas, which is a Gunter Steiner tribute. Can you honor
Big
us
fan.
Could you honor us with a goodbye, Vankas?
Okay, and goodbye, Vankas!
Yes! Goodbye, Vankas!